Joining us now is Tania Smyk. She is a Ukrainian student at the College for Creative Studies in Detroit and is also a member of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan, joining us now on the Oakland County Megacast. Tania, thank you for being with us. Appreciate having you on. So first off, we're about a week, at this point, 8 days, 9 days into Russia's sudden invasion of Ukraine. As you continue to see, and of course you were not born in Ukraine, but you are of Ukrainian descent, you have a Ukrainian background, and so this is something that is close to home for you, of course, being part of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. It's something that you clearly are passionate about. So now we're about a week in, things continue to develop, Russia continues to persist. They're now targeting civilians directly, which is a war crime. What are your continued, what's your continued reaction, and what emotion do you and others on the committee feel as this crisis continues on and really continues to escalate, with Russia now targeting civilian targets and critical infrastructure as well in Ukraine?
It's been extremely, extremely concerning, to say the least. I mean, many of us, whether we were born there and came here, or whether we were born here with parents who were born here and greater, I mean, we're all feeling the effects of this as a community. And I think it's important to point out that at this point, you know, the term crisis and invasion, it's beyond that. It's a war, and it's a genocide that's happening over there. They're targeting innocent civilians, and absolutely, just like you said, this is a war crime.
Yeah, there seems to not be any sort of endgame motivation behind this. When you're targeting civilians, that's one thing. That is a war crime. That's heinous and that's disgusting. But you're also targeting major cities, major buildings, government areas, critical infrastructure, and in some cases completely leveling it, which seems to lead one to believe that this is personal. This is entirely about toppling a group of people that are close to your border, that are directly bordering your nation, because you are paranoid about the relationship with some other nations that are either neutral toward you or open adversaries. As this has continued on, as this invasion, this war, this genocide has continued on the Russian part, on the behalf of Ukrainians, the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Team, what has their continued reaction been here, and particularly in speaking to our leadership at the state level and the federal level, and encouraging the American response to this threat, the continued threat on an ally of ours?
So in recent days, we've expanded our committee. So we have a lot more people filling roles as our group is getting larger and well-known. We're continuing to provide resources for people who live in Michigan and America, so they can properly donate to vetted sources and donate their goods or funds to these reputable sources so that they know where their money is going. It's important to point out that there is a lot of propaganda even circulating in the U.S., so it's important to be aware of what is proper over there and what is proper news these days. And our goal really is to just keep people informed and let the population, especially in America here, know that this is something that is going to affect us here eventually, if it hasn't already.
So have you or others recently on your committee, have you been in contact with those that are still in Ukraine or attempting to flee Ukraine and to nations that are accepting refugees regularly? I mean, we've already heard in just this past week, over 1 million people already have fled to other nations as refugees because of this heinous act of violence from Russia. Have you been in contact with anyone? And as things have continued to escalate, how have their feelings shifted, being in the thick of things and being directly in danger?
Well, so a lot of us are in contact with people who are trying to flee. I know last time I checked, we do have a group of legal people, of attorneys who are on board for helping people get their visas, get their green cards, get refugee status in order so that they can come join their family members if their family members live in the United States. A lot of people are fleeing to Poland, Hungary, Romania, and other countries in Europe just because that visa status, it takes a lot shorter of time. So we're really right now trying to urge the United States to just quicken the process to open its borders for Ukrainian refugees. studies. And actually, I'm personally headed out to Romania tomorrow morning to go assist with refugees on the border city of Civic.
We're joined by Tania Smyk, a Ukrainian student at the College for Creative Studies in Detroit, also a member of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan, joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. And so we mentioned the communication between the committee and leadership in the state of Michigan, and we have to look also at the response from the United States of America to this to the war in Ukraine that's been perpetrated by the Russian government, a government that's continued to have negotiations both with the Ukrainian government and with other allied governments in NATO and in nations that are surrounding Russia but are not necessarily in NATO. And it seems like nothing is coming of that. In the U.S., the reaction continues to be more sanctions on the Russian government, on Russian banking institutions, on oligarchs that are directly connected and are bankrolling Vladimir Putin and his regime. Do you believe, and do others on your committee believe, that this response from the federal government, especially as things have continued to escalate in major cities and even in smaller cities along the way to places like Kyiv in Ukraine, has been enough from the U.S. government?
It's been something. It is not, honestly, it's not enough. It's gotten to the point where Russian forces are taking charge and exploding these major energy sources in Ukraine. And we've reached a point where we need more than just sanctions. Sanctions are wonderful for toppling an economy and targeting people involved in an economy. But at this point, with the status of war, with the pending status of genocide, it's reached a greater importance than just sanctions. And
so what more do you and members of your committee believe or are at this point requesting of our leaders here in Michigan that are representative in the federal government that could have influence on the federal government to provide to Ukrainians on the front lines, considering that the crisis continues to escalate, the violence continues to escalate from the Russians. They are taking over now critical infrastructure. Last night, they opened fire and set fire to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, and then eventually took over that power plant. They already did take over the disaster site at Chernobyl nuclear power plant as well. So what more is being requested of the U.S. government by your committee and by others similar, based on the communications that you have had with those that are still in Ukraine?
Well, I think it's important to note that Russia is one of the world's greatest superpowers. And the United States also has the status of being a superpower. And a lot of Ukrainians, Ukrainian Americans, we're trying to urge our government to take greater action to do what a world superpower would do and provide greater aid, quicker aid, and promoting just more manpower in Ukraine.
We're joined by Tania Smyk, a Ukrainian student at the College for Creative Studies in Detroit, also a member of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan, joining us on the Megacast. And we talk about those that are fleeing the country, that are attempting to seek refugee status in neighboring countries, and especially in places like the United States, where there are large pockets of Ukrainian American populations, including right here in Michigan. In the past couple of days, refugee transport routes have been negotiated by the Ukrainian and the Russian governments, by the United Nations as well. But we talk about the refugee crisis. 1 million people in a week sounds like a lot, but Ukraine is a very large country, and these major cities continue to be under siege by the Russian government in frankly brutal fashion. How much quicker does the refugee transport from Ukraine need to be to really truly protect those that are sheltering in place right now in Ukraine and need safe passage out of the country as Russia continues to show less and less regard for the lives of Ukrainians?
I mean, the situation there is dire. There's plenty of people who, over there, they're receiving propaganda from other cities saying, oh, it's okay, it's quiet here, which is absolutely not the case. And the awareness over there needs to be pushed, and the efforts over here need to be pushed further to promote people to come over to seek safety, because at this point you're dealing with life and death, and these are individuals, these are human lives that they need to be able to continue their precious lives.
And it affects those in Ukraine, certainly, and it affects their families. And there's such a great population of Ukrainian Americans right here in Michigan, right here in the Oakland County area and southeastern Michigan as well. For those that may not be aware, just how extensive is that Ukrainian American population right here in Michigan?
To my knowledge, there's approximately 40,000 Ukrainians in the state of Michigan, and about 20,000 of those are concentrated in the metro area of Detroit.
Yeah, and so it's a significant population here in the metro area. We've seen great shows of support. Thousands of people showed downtown last weekend on Sunday in a rally to show support for Ukrainians and especially for their Ukrainian American friends, neighbors, colleagues, and other acquaintances in the area who are also, in some ways, and it pales in comparison to those who are physically in Ukraine right now, but are also suffering through witnessing this heinous act of violence from Vladimir Putin and his tyrannical government in Russia. And people want to show the support. They want to provide support to Ukrainians, certainly, but also to their Ukrainian American families here in Michigan and in the U.S. as this situation continues, as this war continues. At this moment in time, what are the best ways that those in our communities here in Oakland County and in the state of Michigan can support those in Ukraine?
The best ways that these people here can support Ukraine, we have plenty of resources on our website. You can go visit the crisis response website at uacrisisresponse.org, and on there will be plenty of resources where you can contribute financial donations to reputable sources, provide physical materials as donations. We currently have a drive going on in Warren for certain materials that are being requested over there that are getting more difficult to find as the war continues. And honestly, just supporting the Ukrainians that you know. I mean, a lot of us, we're experiencing emotions that we've never felt before. We're experiencing a situation that is so emotionally traumatic. It's nothing in comparison to what they're dealing with over in Ukraine, but still where the diaspora population is being strongly, strongly affected by this. And just checking in with your Ukrainian friends, your Ukrainian neighbors, it really goes a long way.
We're joined by Tania Smyk, a Ukrainian student at the College for Creative Studies, also a member of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. As she mentioned, you go to their website, you can learn a lot more information. You can find resources to continue to understand the context of what's going on in Ukraine right now, what has led up to this illegal invasion and, frankly, the war crimes being committed by Russia in Ukraine, as well as ways that you can help directly right now, take action and donate to provide support through the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. uacrisisresponse.org is the website. Again, uacrisisresponse.org for more information from the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. Tania, just a couple more minutes with you before we'll need to say goodbye today. At this time, anything else that people should be keeping in mind about the ongoing war in Ukraine, the way that they can support Ukrainian Americans in our community, or how they can get involved that they would like to support the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan in its response and its encouragement of further response from our government in Michigan and across the U.S.?
In terms of helping out directly, we have a volunteer application on our website that you are able to fill out if you feel that you have any business, legal, language skills that we might be able to use. And then just in terms of the situation, stay aware of what's going on. It is a very, very complicated situation, but please do your best to stay aware of the situation. This is going to affect more than just Ukraine. This is affecting the world at a global scale. Stay aware, be aware of what propaganda might be circulating, and focus on myth busting and making sure that you and the people around you understand the situation.
Tania, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about this very complicated crisis that's affecting millions of people around the world, including those here in Michigan.
Thank you.